Hello, this is Bobby D. Glad to be with you today, and we'll be browsing through the Bible. Have you ever had anyone in your family think you were doing something that was crazy? Or have you ever thought you saw someone who was demon possessed? Well, I'm not sure about the demon possessed side, but I know some of my family thought I did some crazy things, like hiking up the Garden of the Gods toward the Kissing Camels, an area that's now prohibited from any kind of climbing at all. Or my sister, my roommate, and a friend of my sister's hiked up Pikes Peak overnight, walking up the Cog Railway. Uh, Left about 9 o'clock at night and didn't get up to the top until 6 in the morning. And let me tell you a secret, it is cold on the backside of Pikes Peak, even on the 4th of July. Water was frozen, and we were not at all prepared. Didn't even have coats, wore tennis shoes. That's some pretty crazy stuff. Well, Jesus is back at his home in Capernaum, and we'll hear some stuff about this story shortly. As you'll see as you read through this part of Mark's Gospel, Jesus had just finished a road trip. He was out preaching and teaching and healing people and casting out demons. And he then took some time and went up in a private area with the disciples and selected 12 of them specifically to do special tasks for him. He sends them out two by two on road trips later on. And after that period of time with the disciples, he went back to his home in Capernaum. And I'm assuming, and it seems to indicate that Jesus was there to get some quiet time and relax and just recuperate from what he had been doing. But as you see very quickly, it didn't work. Didn't turn out just the way Jesus had planned it. And we'll look into just what was going on. What was happening around Jesus' house when he was trying to get some rest? Well, Jesus got into his house in Capernaum, and it wasn't long before the crowd started gathering again. Got so crowded at his house that I don't think they could even eat a meal. It was a crazy, in some sense, situation because he was trying to get some rest, and here the crowds keep coming. The price of fame, I guess. Well, now let's take a look at the rest of the story, as some of you who know Paul Harvey would have said, and we'll see just what actually is taking place. Now, we need a little bit of background because this story needs a little bit of explaining to really set the stage for what is actually going on and what occurs while Jesus interacts with friends, family, and the scribes from Jerusalem. Looking into this story a little more closely, we realize that it wasn't just the crowds that had been healed and released from demons and listening to his message, but there were also other people that came. First of all, Jesus' family came, and that's where you get the idea of crazy because it records in Mark's gospel that they thought he was out of his mind. And then we also have the scribes that came up from Jerusalem, and that kind of adds an interesting flavor to things because here is a map of Israel, and as you look at it carefully, here is where Capernaum is located, and that's where Jesus was. Now, here is Jerusalem, down where the scribes were, and it says that they had come up from Jerusalem to Capernaum. This is probably well, it's not the exact route, but it shows you an idea of what it would be like to travel from Jerusalem up to Capernaum. And on the map, it's only a couple inches, but when you look at the reality of the trip that they made, it's over 120 miles. And if you're walking, which they were obviously doing, that was about a 34-hour walk. So unless you're really into that sort of thing and marathons, you're not going to do it in one day. 2 days, perhaps, but most likely 3 days. So this was a 3-day trip for the scribes to Jerusalem. For the family of Jesus, they were coming as an intervention. They were trying to help him. They were trying to do something to see what was going on and perhaps help him out a little bit. The scribes, not a weekend vacation. This was more like a congressional investigation to see what Jesus was doing and better understand what he was trying to accomplish. Well, summarizing my thinking at this point, the first thing is clear that Jesus' family did not understand what was happening. And when you bring the scribes into the picture, they obviously didn't understand either, but they were also being threatened. When you really think about it, Jesus was upsetting the whole system of Jewish religious thinking at that time. Now, the crowds obviously were there because they wanted to hear what Jesus had to say and perhaps be healed and or have a friend healed. The scribes had a different approach. In fact, as you'll see when you read this yourself, they accused Jesus of casting out demons because he was in league with Satan. And Jesus was pretty harsh about that. He came back and said, listen, you don't break into the strong man's house unless first you tie him up and bind him, and that hasn't obviously happened. And if Satan is casting out himself, then his house is falling and is already destroyed. And that wasn't the case either. Christ had not yet accomplished humanity's salvation. So he was strong enough to say that if you start applying satanic motives to God's actions, then you're at risk of never finding the kingdom of God and never finding salvation. That's kind of a hard thing to say, but Jesus laid it out pretty plainly at that point. Then Jesus moves on and the people tell him that his family is there and they're wanting to talk to him, and he looks around and he says, well, do you see these people here? He says, the ones that are doing my will and following me, they are my family. They're the ones that are really closest to me in my task and my work here on planet Earth. I don't think he was dissing his parents. I think he was simply making an important point to teach the crowds that the relationship between Jesus and his followers is one that's even closer than the relationship that we have with our families. Now that you've seen this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure and hit that thumbs up, the like button, subscribe, and click the bell so that you can get notified about future videos as we put them on the air. Thanks again for watching. We hope to see you again.